Hey, everybody, welcome to the Change Café, the ACMP Ontario podcast, where we sit down with change leaders, practitioners, and thinkers to explore the real stories behind how change actually happens. I'm Andrew Ourique, and thank you for all joining us today for episode number 5, I think. And it's my absolute pleasure to introduce today's guest, John Mattoso. John, thank you so much for being here today. John is joining me. He is a seasoned change leader with more than 25 years of experience helping organizations navigate complex change. He is the founder of Subtonic, a change management consulting firm, and serves as director of member experience for ACMP Quebec. John, welcome to the Change Cafe. Why don't you take a moment to kind of share with our listeners a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. And thanks for having me. First of all, I think when you first mentioned the podcast, I thought this is fun, and I welcome the opportunity every single time to be talking to people like you, people in our circle, people that can actually last when someone says, "Well, what exactly do you do?" Because if I try to explain it to anyone else, usually it's crickets to come out the other way. Thanks, and really happy to be here. I don't know what can I say. Yeah, I think you've mentioned it well. I like to say it's 20 plus years, but if you think of it, it is one hell of a story of muddling through. Because if you think of it, I've gone through every single role that makes up part of what change management is. And at one point, you kind of just realize, oh, wait a minute, I think this is change management. And lo and behold, eventually, with more intention, I would say, went really into it and dove full in. So it's been an incredibly fun ride all along.
It's interesting just based on what your introduction, was. I feel like every single person that's been on the podcast so far has started it out by saying that I started doing change management before change management was a thing. Um, and I think the one thing you brought up, which is a really good point, and I think a lot of change managers will appreciate and definitely have gone through a similar experience, is as soon as you bring up, hey, I'm a change manager, they're like, what do you mean? Actually, a funny story. One time I did say that to a brother, someone in the family, like an in-law. And I said, "Hey," they're like, "What do you do for work?" And I said, I'm a change manager." And they said, "Like what, with coins?" And I was like, it took me a minute to like, I was like, "What do you mean?" At the time I was working in banking. So I was like, what are you talking about?" And they're like, "Yeah, like change, change coins." And I'm like, "What?" So it just the range when you say change management, and we're a little bit of everything to different people, where they're therapist, where they're executor, where they're strategist, and sometimes we're just a shoulder to cry on.
Oh yeah. We're there to listen, and it's kind of funny because you're absolutely right. It's like it's in French. There's a term, and I remember this well in a banking job I had years ago, and they called it BTO, bouche trou officiel, which is basically professional hole plugger. And sometimes I still find that description fits, or not fits, but that is there is maybe the expectation at times. And it's totally fair, right? Because of the work that we tend to do and sometimes need to fill some gaps, some serious gaps that otherwise no one would figure it out. So, and we're really good muddlers.
Mhm.
We muddle through really well.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Like that Swiss Army knife, I feel like it really is plugging the holes, because when the holes exist, then it makes the change just so much more difficult to get through. And sometimes and a lot of times we do have to like roll up our sleeves and get into, and
Yeah.
do things that we maybe aren't used to doing, just to kind of make sure that at the end of the day, the story of the employees is a succinct one. And so it's honestly one of my favorite careers I've ever had. I've had quite a few. I kind of say like I always learned by doing throughout my career and trying to figure out. I was a psychology undergrad. I tried to figure out like what do I like in business, and I tried a ton of different things, and change management, once I got into it and exposed to it, like stuck, and And so I like that concept of,
Yeah.
change management being a little bit of everything, and being able to jump in where I need to in areas that are maybe a little bit ambiguous and try to help solve a problem when nobody can kind of think about the solution. Is just it's just so fun, man. Every day is so different. I just
Yeah.
love it. I love it.
Yeah.
But this isn't about
Because
me. This isn't about
no,
me. I'm not talking about me.
sure it is. Come
I'm
on.
not talking about me. I'm talking about you, John. And so we're gonna go through a couple of questions as we typically do. So we've got our kind of preset questions, and then we'll dive into a lightning round. Are you ready, John?
Absolutely.
I'm ready. All right,
Let's
let's
do it.
dive into it. First question: how did you get started in change management?
Well, you know what? I realized just before I kind of stumbled on it, but it comes back to one thing, and maybe answer this quick. I've thought about this a lot. And if you ask yourself the question, why? I like to think of it from a different angle. We've all worked in a place where change was happened to us. So implicitly, and I mean, viscerally, we know how that feels. And I could recall well years ago. This was very. I was still very young. I was an undergrad and working at the same time, and like an awful change happened. Right, like one of these, a company memo comes out, and lo and behold, the world changes on a lot of people. Luckily, I was part time, but I could see what the impact to other people. And I always thought I came away with like an important lesson. It's I don't want that to happen to me this way again. And ever since then, I started doing work, um, whether it being in training and L&D, and I worked a long time in communications, but that experience always came back. And when it came together, it was always about helping people make sense of what it is that they do. Guess what? If you start to add it all up, one plus one, and eventually, hey, a job description comes around as, or a title or something that's like, wait a minute, what is this? And you start to learn it, and then you recognize yourself in it. And that's when I knew that, oh, I've been doing this all along, only I couldn't put a title to it. I couldn't put a name to it. I think I recall well about maybe 2010. Um, ProSci at the time was in its ascendancy, in terms of sort of like market penetration. And it really struck home. Not so much, and this is, I'm not an advocate of one methodology or another, but sort of the value proposition and what that meant, and working with people, and the whole conversation around the people side of change, right? I think that's their motto, but it really came down to it, and it was informed by that experience. It happened to me. It happened to everyone. I don't think there's a single person that doesn't know what that experience is. But it became a kind of a sense of mission ever since then, and it also made it that every single day there was purpose into what I was doing. Whether in our days they're difficult, but that really was the genesis, I'd say.
Oh yeah, I love everything that you said, and I think a lot of it resonated with me. I think from getting into change management, almost like you said, as like a mission and purpose. And I remember, reading Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Purpose in Life. And it's one of my favorite books. It got me through a pretty rough time in my life. And it's, I think, exactly what draws me to change management is the purpose behind it, and having gone through an experience, a poor experience, and then having that feeling to like want to show up for people who are in that situation, moving forward so that their experience isn't like my own. I think there's nothing more, there's nothing of more purpose in business, in my opinion, honestly, than to work in change management, because you do get this chance to help show up for people. And it's not that the people around them, leaders are not willing to do it. It's just that there's not the attention that needs to be given onto the employee experience. With the change manager, you've got that person to just like, the only thing I care about is these employees and their experience through it. I think the observe and report aspect of a change manager, I mean, at least in my experience, I've never gotten to a situation where I go to a leader and say, "Hey, this is what I've seen. These are some of the feedback that I'm getting. This is what I think we should do about it." never have they come to me and said, absolutely, no, I don't really care. They're like, oh my God, yes, let's do that. The issue is like without us, that doesn't come to the surface. It's not observable. And if you can't see it, you can't do anything about it. And I feel like that's the role that, we play. And sometimes, like you said earlier, like we got to get our hands dirty, we got to dive in and we got to close the gaps ourselves. But just having somebody there whose like main goal is on the employee experience throughout the change, it's pivotal and it's so much work, to
Oh
like
yeah,
have
yeah,
that. And
yeah,
so it needs that dedicated person that's just so focused on just making sure that the experience there is, getting started with an approach and then having the tentacles out there to understand like as feedback is coming in to adjust and evolve as you go. And then even the pro sci element, I remember it was around the same time that I started with pro sci, and I think it was probably in and around the 2015 mark for me. And I remember doing that course and having a very similar sense of like, oh my God, yeah, this is great. I can't
yeah.
believe the job that focuses on this. I love that idea. I feel like I'd be really great at it. So I feel like, we can attribute, I know there's a lot of, everyone has different opinions around pro sci, and I have my own opinions on all of the different, frameworks and methodologies. To your point, I think, the more the merrier. There's no one right
Absolutely.
answer. So give me another framework. I'm happy to look at it because, I'm not naive to think that any one of them is correct. I think all of them has their merits. But I remember specifically going through the pro sci training and being like, oh man, like I've never thought of this stuff before. And the way
Yeah,
to track it and the metrics, it was great. It really got me interested in change management to be like, this is a real thing, not
yeah,
just something that people do at the side of their desks. And so I think a lot of people, a lot of change managers are kind of in that same boat where pro sci kind of was the first opportunity where they got a chance to see the profession as what it is. And so I think while we may have like different opinions around pro sci, I know I've been vocal about mine. I think they I'll never forget like that they gave me that opportunity to see this as a profession and take it to where it is. So I attribute a lot of the success that I have, and I think a lot of change managers do to the pro sci course we all took,
yeah,
years and years
yeah.
ago.
Yeah, I mean, that was the moment where for me it all came together because I had prior to it been doing, for all intents and purposes, had been doing it. But usually we from a specific line, either long time in organizational communications, and my bias was always very change centric and been supporting organizations in that way. But this was the time where what I thought absolutely fascinating was the consolidation of all of this, of someone's baggage. And what I love about it is it's if you've worked one day in your life, you implicitly know possibly what what change, what support is required when a change happens, and just do it. Just live through one poorly, or even kind of half baked, and right away you just know it just doesn't feel right. You
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And when you haven't lived through it, it's at the end of the day, it's just understanding that there are people that are living through it right now in the organization, and just having that perspective and the capacity and being resourced for change management gives folks the opportunity to actually sit down with them, have the conversation,
yeah,
understand where they're coming from, and really help show up for them. And so, I think it's such a great field. I'm so excited about the future that, change management has. I feel
oh yeah,
like I've seen such progress in executive appetite and understanding for what change management is about and really around, the value. I remember like earlier on in my career, we were always talking about like we got to show the quantifiable benefits of change
Mhm.
management. Luckily, we've gotten away to that, and I think more common sense has prevailed, thankfully, to say like, yeah, you know what, we do need somebody who focuses on the employee's experience during a major complex change where we've got their jobs, their titles, their benefits, and all that type of stuff changing. It's probably a good idea to have somebody represent them and make sure that we're hearing them out and doing something based on their feedback.
Yeah,
So I'm glad we've moved past that a little bit.
yeah,
But let's keep on going because I can't wait to
absolutely.
Or so one of the next questions, which I always find really interesting, is just one moment that challenged you the most, and what did you learn from it?
Great question. When I think of it, to go back to ProSci days, I was awkward with it, let's just say, and realize, and it's such an important lesson. And I think you alluded to it. A methodology cannot be applied rigidly. And sort of that steadfast insistence on applying something the way you've learned it. I I did exactly that. And let's just say it did not work out so well. And in fact, like it was actually kind of a fiasco, right? Because people just don't tick that way, right? You can have a tool, you can help guide it. I find tools are really good sometimes when you have to have a conversation with people or you have to have a common ground and a common language. But what I realized is that common language was mine to, I learned it. It was not theirs. And guess what? If you cannot even agree on terms or what those mean, that's going to be very, very difficult. And to kind of show that this is important because here, I'll show you the visuals of why this is important, didn't go over so well. So I think it was an important lesson. And for me, it was also kind of a reminder that you have to stop, you have to listen, you have to observe, you have to be curious. You cannot come in with any kind of preset notions on how to go about it. Because in the end, just talk to people, and usually you find out more in 2 seconds than you ever would in applying anything, any kind of methodology. The methodology is a tool, right? Much in the same way, like I like to tinker at home and do renovations. I won't go into that story, but I've got a lot of tools, and the right tool for the right job.
I love everything that you said, honestly. I was just like in the background here, just being like, yes, yes, yes. There is nothing that drives me more crazy. Here we go, my soapbox. That's coming. There's nothing that drives me more crazy than a change manager who doesn't apply the same approach to their stakeholders that they would do to the end user. And
Mm,
it comes down to know your audience. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah.
And I have been myself, I've gone through this too, the preachy days of like early change management where I decided, everyone needs to understand methodologies and everyone needs to understand processes and what we're going to be doing and how we're going to track it. Nobody cares.
No,
Nobody cares.
no.
Nobody cares. You care. You need to care as a change manager, but nobody cares. At the end of
Nope.
the day, know your audience and meet them where they are at. I think one of the latest trends right now is, lean change, which I love.
Mhm.
I love.
Yeah.
But not everybody loves mural. Not everybody loves mural
No,
boards,
no.
playing around with those. Some people like PowerPoint still, Some
Yeah,
people,
yeah.
I hate to say it, some people like Excel. I know, guys. I know. I can't believe it either. But if that's what they like, you use it.
You
If
use
you
it. Yeah.
at the end of the day, I don't get it. I don't understand and the preachiness that we do around like this is why we do it.
Mm,
This is the value of change. This it's not worth it, guys. And they know why there's a value of change. This is why you're there.
yeah.
Um, just do what you got to do to like help smooth the transition along in whatever format they like. If they don't want to use anything, just have a conversation. We live in a beautiful world with AI, you know?
Yeah.
Gone are the days where we need to be in person in a meeting and scribbling notes furiously. We got Copilot, we got other AI tools. I'm sure Zoom's got one.
Oh, yeah.
Just have a conversation and it does all the notes for you. And if you want to ask it, like put it into an impact assessment template, it can do all of that for you. Focus on the conversation and meet where people where they are. Honestly, drives me nuts. The change is not just with the end user, it's part of the project team people too. And you got to manage that change as well. And some of these people have never used Miro before. They've never done a change impact assessment before. It drives me nuts, John.
Yeah. I feel it. I feel it. I feel it. But you know what? Here's something. And now there's no change I approach now, never, without thinking the following. And I mean, this is tattooed. It's in my brain forever. First of all, when I step into a change, what do I know? Absolutely nothing. Why? Because I haven't spoken to a person. And until you don't speak to the people, you know nothing. And that means that is what's going to inform what comes next. Those conversations. So you have to be equipped with curiosity. That's the magic power right there. If you're not even remotely curious about what is going on and talking to people, you're gonna struggle. It's no tool in the world that can overcome that. And number two, it's the fact that, and this, when we step in, it's a privilege. And I believe in implicitly, which means let's just say it's not my change. Come in, do my change act, do the stuff, help whatever, try to do the best I can, help them. But in the end, I leave. And I move on to the next gig. Those people that are going through the change, they're going to have to live with it forever. And that is a sea change. That means you can't come in and sort of personalize it and to the point that you think it's your change. No, you're a privileged passenger. You're there to help, but it's their change. They're the ones that have to live with it, right? Like if the pain of trying to go through an ERP change, and it's the people that are actually having to use the tool, and then you walk away, and things aren't going so great. What are you doing? Like us as practitioners, well, we're helping someone else, different challenge, different adventure. They're living with that, and if it went well, great. Um, if it didn't, or they're struggling with it, they're going to struggle with it for a very long time, right? And so I think those are the two things that I can think of, that we have to be real, kind of recognize that, right? Or it's certainly for me, those are the two things. I know absolutely nothing until I actually talk to people, and it's such a an easy. I mean, look, we're chatting it up like that, and we are talkers. Like I think we are a business of people that like to connect with people and getting to know people. You discover so much. I love your insight on what AI can help capture, because that's right. Like I've always hated taking notes. I'm terrible at it. Well, now if a tool can do it for me, so all I have to do is actually talk to people. Fantastic.
I love
Exciting times.
It's exciting times, right? And I think
Yeah.
we've only scratched the surface. And I absolutely love what you've said here. It's the going in with, we know nothing, guys. We know nothing until we get into it. And going in with any preconceived notions, like you said, is such a mistake,
Yeah.
because every change is different. I've worked on 5 integrations, M&As, and I will tell you that every single one of them was literally like nothing I've ever seen before. Now,
Absolutely. I can
there's
imagine.
some similarities, yeah, changes and benefits. Yeah, it happens to all of them,
Sure.
but the actual change itself is completely different. The people involved, the teams that they're going into, the teams that they're coming from, how the organization is organized, the different regions that are involved. Oh my God. It's
Oh, yeah.
literally, so me going into any one of those and thinking, I got this, like I know exactly what needs to happen, would have been my demise. And I think it applies to every other type of change, regardless of how small or how big. You got to go into it, like you said, being curious and coming to the realization, the very real realization that you don't know anything. And that's okay.
Yep. That's
That's what
okay.
everyone around you there is for. They're going to help you along the way, but don't go in. If you go in thinking that you got the solution, you're not a good change manager, period. I don't care
Exactly.
who you are. I
Exactly.
don't care who you are.
Exactly.
And it is a privilege. We are privileged to be in that position because we are the only ones on the team sometimes that have the employees' experience top of mind. We are
Yep.
their reps. We are their voice. It's on us to make sure that that solution that comes in at the end of the day is something that they're aware of and they knew was happening and they're equipped to get rolling once it rolls out. Never happened to me. I don't, but I hope that, and I hope that they were better off with me in there. That's sometimes all we can hope for. But yeah, it's a privilege, man. You're there to help them through and
Yeah.
stay curious. I love it. I love this conversation. The next question, I feel like you answered already, but you let me know. What's
Yeah.
one message you hope our audience takes away from this conversation?
Yeah, I think we touched on it, but I might, I can't say this enough. Talk to people. Listen, listen. Like, I think one of the unfortunate things I think that has happened over years. We're collectively very busy people, but more importantly, very distracted people. Right? Like, there's a lot competing for our attention now, and this is true of everyone. And what I've observed, and I was guilty of this as well, is sometimes I don't, if you don't spend a bit of time, step back and recognize, pause, and ensure that you're actually acting with intention, and to actually listen. What happens sometimes is that we're in a rush of covering things. And so sometimes we're formulating a question before we actually listen to the person. And then what a lost opportunity, because there's critical information coming there. And in the end, we're not there to prove out anything on our side. We do have to prove things out. For example, to someone's got a budget, someone's hired us, and we do need to, and we do need to recognize the business cycle, and we need to support that. But in the end, what we're there to do and execute, and help people out with, just listen. But to listen, it's not always easy, especially nowadays where sometimes reactions are fast. So we're in a rush, and just take that time because it's so important. Like, without that, we kind of lose something so essential.
I love that. I feel like if I asked that question about like what's the one challenging moment, it was me to learn how to listen. Um,
Mm. Yeah.
as my wife knows very well, I struggle with that quite a bit. And to be honest with you, when I first started podcasting, it is really what trained me to listen. And obviously, my wife helped that along as well because I come from an Italian family, half Italian, half Portuguese. No one's listening to anybody. We're all talking all over the place. There's 20 different conversations happening at the dinner table. You're just trying to get a word in. You're focused on what are you going to say versus listen to anybody. So, that's 36 years of training like that. And
Yeah.
so it was very hard for me to like adjust, but honestly, it's such a good skill and it's such a hard skill for some to grasp, myself included. And I feel like that was where I needed to do a lot of work in terms of like active listening and not thinking about what I want to say. And a lot of it came from like imposter syndrome too, because it was
Mm.
me always wanting to think about what I can say so that I sound smart. And
Mm.
then I stopped caring about all that. And I was just, and that maybe came up with maturity, as I grew older. I stopped caring so much about, what people thought. I think I'd proven myself a bit to know that I deserved a seat at the table. And those types of things helped with not me worrying about like what I'm going to say. But I remember early on that was always top of mind for me. It's like, okay, they're going through like, I got to think of a really smart question. And so I think that really affected me. But nowadays it's really just that focus on really active listening and staying curious, which great, honestly, super, super interesting conversation. Looking at time, I know we
Oh
that's
yeah.
the other thing about Italians and Portuguese people, man. We
Oh
talk like
boy.
forever. We'll talk
Well,
forever,
you just described my every single family dinner of my life. Right.
right? That's right.
If you want to get something said, you just said it louder than everyone else.
You got to louder. Yeah,
Yeah.
louder. Exactly. I think we'll move into the lightning round because I feel like we'll touch on that last question
Yeah.
around reading, watching. But before we do that, honestly, and for as we're talking through this, I know you posted an article last week, and I wanted to
Yeah.
touch on that too because I just read it today and stumbled on it. So the article that you posted, it was we've been here before, and we were talking a little bit about AI. So
Right.
I knew we were talking today, so I literally am gonna like go a bit off script and kind of
Sure.
throw in like a different question here because I wanted to get your thoughts on this because there's a lot of conversations going on right now around AI.
Yes.
We've talked about it. I feel like almost all the time. It's almost become like a point of like it's like enough already.
Yep.
But
Yep.
but it's in every conversation. And what I really liked about your article is it reminded us around, I think a lot of articles and a lot of talk is around like trying to predict the next step of like what's going to happen with AI. You did something really interesting. You looked at it from where we've already been in the
Right.
past to help predict what's gonna happen next. And so I wanted to ask you, just based on what you think, and I thought of the question. I was like, I feel like this question might be the one. So, like, if for some reason, 10 years from now, somebody stumbles onto this podcast with me and you, John, and
Mhm.
they're listening to us talk about this, what do you hope history says we got right when it comes to AI?
Well, that's an amazing question, and thanks for that. Listen, you're right. I decided I didn't want to add my voice to try and predict or even talk about here's the best way to work with AI, or here's where AI is headed. I mean, pick up the news any day, and mind blowing things are happening at a speed that is staggering. Right, like just 3 days ago, we get the news that ChatGPT, an agent, went rogue and literally hacked an agent that they were testing. Literally went outside its sandbox and hacked the company. And then we find out yesterday that actually there were more involved. So there wasn't just one; it was multiple companies, and some of the damage that was done to security systems was severe. And now just today, looks like the US is finally maybe rethinking its own policies. I didn't want to add to that. You're absolutely, there's a lot being written, and some of it really, really good, and some of it, let's just say, mm, mm, I won't go into that. I thought, like, what have we learned in the past, and what have we gone through? Because look, I'm coming from a position that AI is a general purpose technology. Chat GPT is not. It's not an accidental name. It's not whimsical. It is a GPT with chat on top. And what does that mean? It comes from a lot of research and from economists. But to simplify it as much as possible, it's a technology introduced that comes to be picked up by every sector of an economy and ultimately by a society. When you think of a GPT, there are big ones, and I'm going to be writing about a few of them, but all the way back to the printing press, or when you think of electricity, or when you think of the combustion engine. Like, think about that. Like when the combustion engine came out, how the world changed absolutely over time. And it was all sorts of implications, right? Because first came the cars, but wait a minute, how, these are fast moving vehicles. How are they not going to collide with each other? Oh, wait a minute, what about red light? All of these things came about it, but no one figured it out. And I thought, huh, that's where we are if we look at it from an historic lens, we are going through that, right? Think of aviation. It took a lot of work to eventually come to a worldwide consensus on now when you fly, there are rules that everyone follows. Well, we're still, the world is starting to come there, but we're still not quite there. So if we think about 10 years forward, in terms of GPTs are concerned, that is still young. There's a lot that is not written and that we'll be writing. But what I do hope from 10 years from now is that we do learn from history, recognize where we came from, and recognize one thing that is consistent throughout is our core humanity. It was as people that we figured out how to work through this. And and I think that's the essential story here is that in the end, it is a human story and it will be a human story. And we will yet to figure it out. Is it predictive? Absolutely not. All I'm looking to do, and it's gonna, you know, this is funny because it was a small project. I thought I was gonna do a one-time LinkedIn post, and now I've collected over 100 now, right now, like 145 sources. So this is now turning into I think maybe a weekly, bi-weekly newsletter, maybe put into a book, but it really comes down to what have we learned from history and what are these patterns and our patterns, and they are recurrent, and we're really in it. The only difference with AI is that all of it is happening fast, really fast. Like, think of the printing press. It had the same kind of penetration in the world, but it took close to 400 years. And if we take out the sort of the Western centric perspective and look at from let's say Asian traditions, and then some traditions that were coming out of let's say Northern Africa, plus coupled with Western, it was a long time, but society was transformed as a result of it. And what we have now is things are happening at a speed that is faster than legislators have time to sort of fully comprehend. But I think that in the end, that is it. Like, I hope that we do learn from history, because to ignore it is to maybe repeat some of the mistakes, and we've made mistakes.
I love all of that. And I feel like it touches on a lot of what we talked about around the value of frameworks and how it's a starting point. I feel like to now look at the past as a way to like help inform what we do in the future is also a mistake, just as much of a mistake of approaching a new problem the same way every single
Yeah.
time, or a different problem the same way every time. I think they're the same kind of issues. I think you need to have a holistic approach to it. I want to ask you this other question as you were talking. I couldn't help but think this as well, is just based on where we're going and how we've been approaching AI, just based on what you've been seeing, like what do you think, what are the risks that we are going, or we're trending towards based on how maybe we're approaching AI right now?
Well, it's a big question. Look, a few things happen, have happened, will happen, I would anticipate. It is going to be no clue how this turns out. But one thing we can say, I think with some certainty, it will reinvent, I think, in the same ways as electricity did, or the combustion engine. It will change the very nature of how we work. But is that all terrible? No, but there will be short-term pain, and look, that's why we're here, right? See, and this is the whole, and that was sort of like the motivation behind this, behind writing this, is that I'm trying to make sense of this, both as a change, as a change leader, a change manager, but as well, history is a bit of a family business. Like there's a lot of, we're passionate about history, so it just, I stumble on it, but there is a bit of history to that history. But the we have to recognize that it will be, there will be some painful adjustments, but if we learn from the past, if we learn what has happened, if we learn our humanity for it, we have a superpower that can take this through this. And this is always true. I remember being at the Change Leadership Conference in Toronto in May, and I can't remember the speaker. It was a conversation in front, and one of the examples was, like when when cars first came out, I was saying, and you had a cottage industry of people that used to work to support horse and carriage, right? And that disappeared. What happens to those people? That is a massive change of, new jobs that will come. We don't even know the jobs that will come, and that's how deep this is. So while there are some skills that might need to change and tasks that will disappear, others will come. We haven't figured that one out. But if we don't learn from it, or make the mistake of thinking this is so new, that, because I hear a lot of this narrative nowadays, it's unprecedented, brand new. Well, then we're denying ourselves a richness of history that can help us and make sense of the world that we are in right now. But we're in a tough time. And look, one thing that's also very common in every single GPT is that these always enter in a world where everyone, or let's say a vast majority of people, their frame of reference is, they don't have a frame of reference for what is coming in. So what do we try to do? As humans, we're going to try as much as possible to make sense of it And so we apply that which we know and try to sort of smush it in before eventually you come to realize this is a brand new beast, and it will have its own reality. It's starting to happen. And this is far from doom and gloom. I'm an absolute optimist on this, but I do think there will be adjustments. And I think that is it. If we don't at least realize that we do have the richness of our humanity to lie on, then we'll make maybe some mistakes. Will we make mistakes? Absolutely. But if we make mistakes and learn from them, then I think I see what follows can be incredible.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And I do feel like we may not be looking at it from that vantage point right now, of looking at the past, like very recent, even examples of technological advancement, how we've managed the change through those. And I think one of the things that comes like top of mind for me when I think about it is just like, because I had gone through like the digital transformation sort of journey back in the day. I'd worked for banking industry and digitizing files and trying to get more from paper based to online. I think one of the main things, even early in my career, I noticed with that change to what I'm also seeing show up for AI is underestimating the notion that it's easy to use AI, but it's really not that easy. And I feel like every day I'm learning brand new things that I wish I would have known day one. And so I think honestly, there's so much value in what you're doing and what you're pulling together. And I think is a service to all of us as you're diving deep into all of that information to really help us show up the way that we need to help manage this change effectively, taking the learnings from the past, sprinkling a little bit of the new stuff based on, the things that are different here,
Absolutely.
but we got a starting point. I know we're at
Wait,
time,
yeah.
John,
Yeah.
and I know we've got the lightning round still, so maybe we're gonna do
Oh,
something a
yeah.
little bit different for the
Cool.
lightning round. I think we might do something on LinkedIn for that. But, I'm gonna wrap things up for us, and I just wanted to say thank you, John, for taking the time and joining us here today on the Change Cafe, and sharing your story, your perspective, as well as some of the work that you're starting to do. So, for those of you who aren't already, please follow John on LinkedIn. So as those articles start to come out, you get a chance to lean in and comment. I'm sure you guys all have a lot of feedback on this topic. Everyone does. And so, yeah, let's keep this conversation going after. To everyone that's listening, thank you guys so much for joining us for this episode of the Change Cafe. Remember, if you enjoyed this conversation, you can subscribe on Apple as well as Spotify. Or if you prefer to watch us, you can always jump onto YouTube. We're there too. And be sure to follow ACMP Ontario on LinkedIn so that you get alerted every time a new episode drops. We also got a newsletter so that you can follow, and we send out monthly bulletins, including a reminder of when these episodes go live. I want to also let you guys know that if you're going to be in the Toronto area, ACMP Ontario is going to be hosting an event on September 29th at Hilton, Toronto. It is the Built for Connection event. It's going to piggyback or be around the same time as Change Toronto. So if you're going to be there for Change Toronto, stop on by. Or if you're not able to make Change Toronto because of work commitments, come by at night on the Tuesday. I'll be there. John, are you going to be at Change Toronto?
Oh, for sure. I've already booked in.
Amazing. John will be there. So if you want to come meet us in person, feel free to go. Registration is now open for the Built for Connection event. So just jump on over to the ACMP Ontario page and register. Spaces are limited, so make sure that you guys jump on board and secure your spot. Thank you all so much. My name is Andrew Ourique, and this has been the Change Cafe. Until next time, keep the conversation going. Thanks, everybody.